Microsoft Power BI Certification, PL-300, Exam 50 Questions and Answers. Schema to simplify your data. You need to understand the relationship between the tables in the star schema. What is the relationship from a fact table to a dimension table? Option 1, many to many. Option 2, many to one. Option 3, one to many. Option 4, one to one. Correct answers, many to one. Correct answers, many to one. Explanation: there is a many-to-one relationship from a fact table and dimension table. For each row in a dimension table there may be multiple matching rows in the fact table. You have the following Power Query M formula that generates a range of dates. Equals list dates, hashtag date, 2020-05-31, 365, hashtag duration, 1000. What is the resulting date range? Option 1. A list of days ending on May 31, 2020 and starting 365 days earlier. Option 2. A list of days starting on May 31, 2020 and ending 365 days later. Option 3. A list of months ending in May 2020 and starting 12 months earlier. Option 4. A list of months starting in May 2020 and ending 12 months later. Correct answers. A list of days starting on May 31, 2020 and ending 365 days later. Explanation: the hashtag date element designates the starting date, 365 designates the duration counter, and hashtag duration, 1000, designates the duration interval in days, so this formula results in a listing of days starting on May 31, 2020 and ending 365 days later. You have a fact table that contains sales data and the following two date columns. Order date. Ship date. Both columns have a relationship to the date column and the calendar table, and DAX measures have been configured to use these relationships for calculations related to order or ship dates. You need to ensure that by default, the calendar table does not filter the fact table, unless it is using a DAX measure that uses these relationships. What should you do? Option 1, disable make this relationship active for both relationships. Option 2, enable apply security filter in both directions for both relationships. Option 3, enable make this relationship active for both relationships. Option 4, set the cross-filter direction to both for each relationship. Correct answers: disable make this relationship active for both relationships. Explanation: you can have multiple inactive relationships between two tables in Power BI datasets. DAX measures can then use the USRLATIONSHIP function to activate a relationship for calculations. Relationship direction is not required for either the relationships or measures to work in this model setup. Only one active relationship can exist between two tables in a Power BI dataset. Applying a security filter in both directions isn't required for this model setup. You need to assign items to a display folder. Which three items can be assigned to a display folder? Each correct answer presents part of the solution. Option 1, calculated column. Option 2, column. Option 3, measure. Option 4, report. Option 5, table. Correct answers: calculated column, column, measure. Explanation: tables and reports cannot be assigned a display folder. Columns, calculated columns, and measures can be assigned a display folder. You create a data model in Power BI Desktop that contains DAX calculated columns and measures. You now need to create a report. In which two places can a DAX calculated column be used, but a DAX calculated measure cannot be used? Each correct answer presents a complete solution. Option 1, as a filter in the filters on this page well of the filters pane. Option 2, as a filter in the filters on this visual well of the filters pane. Option 3, as an item in that add drill through fields here well of the visualizations pane. Option 4, as an item in the fields well of a slicer. Correct answers: as a filter in the filters on this page well of the filters pane, as an item in the fields well of a slicer. Explanation: unlike a measure, a calculated column can be used in a slicer to place filter options on the report page. DAX measures cannot be placed in the filters on this page well. They can only be placed per visual, in the filters on this visual well of the filters pane. Both DAX columns and measures may be used as a visual level filter. Both DAX columns and measures can be used in the drill-through well. You need to use DAX quick measures to generate results to use in a report. Which type of DAX quick measure calculations will not work against a direct query table? Option 1, aggregate per category. Option 2, mathematical operations. Option 3, time intelligence. Option 4, X functions. Correct answers, time intelligence. Explanation: time intelligence functions have performance implications and are disabled for quick measures against direct query tables. Mathematical operations, aggregate per category, and X functions are all supported against direct query. You have a Power BI desktop model. You need to determine when to use implicit and explicit measures. What is a feature of an implicit measure that explicit measure does not have? Option 1, end users can change the aggregation type of implicit measure from the values well of a visual. Option 2, implicit measures can be used as a drill-through field. Option 3, implicit measures can be used to create quick measures. Option 4, implicit measures can be used with field parameters. Correct answers: end users can change the aggregation type of implicit measure from the values well of a visual. Explanation: implicit measures can select from one of 9 aggregations when placed in the values well of a visual. Both implicit and explicit measures can be used as a drill-through field, to create quick measures, and with field parameters. You need to reduce the cardinality of a column in a Power BI dataset. What should you do? Option 1, add a prefix to each value in the column. Option 2, add a suffix to each value in the column. Option 3, replace null values with a value of 0. Option 4, reduce the number of distinct values. Correct answers: reduce the number of distinct values. Explanation: a column that has a lot of repeated values and a low number of distinct values will have a low cardinality. Reducing the number of distinct values reduces cardinality. Replacing nulls does not change the number of distinct values. A static prefix or suffix does not change cardinality. You need to reduce the size of a Power BI model that contains 2 dimension tables named date and location, and 1 fact table named temperatures. The temperatures table contains the following fields: reading time, date time; date key, date; location key, whole number; temp C, decimal. You have 1 row for every 5-minute interval for each location. The temperatures table is related to the date and location dimensions by using many-to-one relationships. You need to reduce the cardinality of the table. The solution must ensure that the dataset supports reports that analyze average temperature by hour and location. What 2 actions should you perform? Each correct answer presents part of the solution. Option 1, create a column that contains the time values for the start of the hour of the reading time value. Option 2, disable the query load on the temperatures query in the Power Query Editor. Option 3, remove the rows that occur exactly at 0 minutes and 0 seconds on the hour. Option 4, use the group by functionality to aggregate the rows by hour, date key, and location key and then create an average temp C value per row. Option 5, use the group by functionality to aggregate the rows by date key, reading time, and location key and then create a max temp C value per row. Correct answers: create a column that contains the time values for the start of the hour of the reading time value. Use the group by functionality to aggregate the rows by hour, date key, and location key and then create an average temp C value per row. Explanation: creating a column that displays the hour is necessary to summarize by hour when there is no time or hour dimension. Summarizing the table by using the group by functionality reduces the number of rows. Reporting requirements dictate that the aggregated temperature value should be an average. The table should be summarized by hour, date key, and location key in order to support the required reports. Removing rows that occur exactly on the hour removes data and does not support the reporting requirements. Disabling the query load removes the table from the model completely. You plan to run Power BI Desktop Performance Analyzer. You need to ensure that the data engine cache will not impact the test results without restarting Power BI Desktop. What should you do first? Option 1. Add a blank page to the .bix file and select it. Option 2. Connect DAX Studio to the data model. Option 3. Invoke the clear cache function. Option 4. Invoke the refresh metadata function. Correct answers: connect DAX Studio to the data model. Explanation: DAX Studio, once connected to the data model, can be used to clear the data engine cache. The clear cache function can be invoked from DAX Studio once you connect it to the data model. The refresh metadata function can be invoked from DAX Studio to update the metadata of the currently selected model. Adding a blank page to the .bix file and selecting it is the first step in clearing the visual cache, not the data engine cache. You have a Power BI Desktop PBIX file that contains a single page report with multiple visuals. You plan to use Performance Analyzer to evaluate the performance of the visuals. You need to eliminate the impact of visual caching during the evaluation. What should you do first? Option 1. Add a blank page to the PBIX file. Option 2. Connect DAX Studio to the data model. Option 3. Reopen the PBIX file. Option 4. Start recording. Correct answers: add a blank page to the PBIX file. Explanation: to eliminate the impact of visual caching during a performance evaluation when using Performance Analyzer to evaluate the visuals, you must first add a blank page to the report, select that page, and then reopen the PBIX file. Connecting DAX Studio to the data model is the first step to clear the data engine cache. Recording should not be started until both the visual cache and the data engine cache are cleared. You have a Power BI desktop dataset based on a star schema data source. You need to use data analysis expression, DAX, to create a date table in the dataset and populate the table with a range of dates based on the earliest and latest date within the dataset. Which function should you use? Option 1. Calendar. Option 2. Calendar Auto. Option 3. Date. Option 4. DateDiff. Correct answers: Calendar Auto. Explanation: the Calendar Auto function generates a range of dates based on the earliest and latest date within the dataset. The calendar function generates a range of dates, but it requires providing the start and end date. The date function returns the specified date in the datetime format. The DateDiff function returns an interval between two dates. In Power BI Desktop, you plan to use M language to define a common date table spanning a period of 10 years. You need to identify the M language function that would allow you to specify that rows in the table should represent consecutive days within the date range you designated. Your solution must minimize administrative effort. Which syntax should you use? Option 1. #date. Option 2. #duration. Option 3. List, combine. Option 4. List, durations. Correct answers: #duration. Explanation: the #duration function of the M language allows you to specify the datetime values that will be entered into individual rows of a date table. The #date function creates a date value based on the date parameters you specify. The list, combine, combines multiple lists into one. List, durations returns a list of count duration values, rather than dates. You have a Power BI desktop dataset that includes a table named Employees containing a row for each employee with the following columns: Employee ID, Employee Name, Manager ID, Manager Name. You need to flatten the parent-child hierarchy in the Employees table by adding an extra column that will contain a listing of employee IDs for all direct and indirect managers of each employee. Which two data analysis expression, DAX, functions should you use? Each correct answer presents part of the solution. Option 1. Path cross-join. Option 2. Accept path attempt. Option 3. Accept path. Option 4. Path attempt cross-join. Option 5. Related. Correct answers: accept path, path attempt cross-join. Explanation: the path function returns a string with identifiers of all the parents of the current identifier, which is used for flattening. The pathotem function returns the item at the specified position of a string, which is also used for flattening. The accept function returns rows from one table which do not appear in another table, which would require another table. The cross-join function returns a Cartesian product of all rows from all tables that the function references. The related function returns a related value from another table, which would require another table. You plan to get data from flat files for a Power BI dataset. You need to select a location to store the files. Which location requires an on-premises data gateway? Option 1, OneDrive for Business. Option 2, Personal OneDrive account. Option 3, SharePoint online team sites. Option 4, shared folder on a local network. Correct answers, shared folder on a local network. Explanation, the shared folder on a local network will require a gateway as it is not available to the internet. SharePoint Online, OneDrive, and OneDrive for Business all can be refreshed as cloud data sources without a gateway. You plan to add data to Power BI Desktop from a new data source. You are evaluating whether you should use the direct query storage mode or the import storage mode. What are two benefits of using import instead of direct query? Each correct answer presents a complete solution. Option 1, full support for the Q&A Power BI service. Option 2, full support for the Quick Insights Power BI service. Option 3, minimized local disk space usage. Option 4, minimized need for data refresh. Option 5, support for per table configuration. Correct answers, full support for the Q&A Power BI service or full support for the Quick Insights Power BI service. Explanation, the import storage mode is fully supported with the Q&A and Quick Insights Power BI services. The import storage, unlike direct query, does not minimize local disk space usage and does not eliminate the need for a data refresh. Both the direct query and import storage modes support per table configuration. You have multiple Excel files stored in a folder synced with OneDrive for Business. You need to import data from the files. The solution must not use a data gateway. Which type of connector should you use? Option 1, Excel Workbook. Option 2, Folder. Option 3, SharePoint Folder. Option 4, SharePoint List. Correct answers, SharePoint Folder. Explanation, a SharePoint folder is the only connector that will allow the import of multiple Excel, or CSV, files stored in a OneDrive for Business folder, without using a data gateway. While you can connect to the folder on an on-premises device, it would require a data gateway to refresh in the service. An Excel workbook would only connect to a single Excel file and would also require a data gateway. A SharePoint list connector only connects to SharePoint lists and cannot connect to Excel files. You plan to publish a dataset from Power BI Desktop. You need to ensure that a server name can be changed after the dataset has been published to the Power BI service. Which two actions should you perform? Each correct answer presents part of the solution. Option 1, create a parameter. Option 2, create a query for the server name. Option 3, from the data source settings in Power BI Desktop, update the permissions. Option 4, from the data source settings, update the server source to use a parameter. Option 5, update the source applied step of all related queries to reference the server name query. Correct answers, create a parameter. From the data source settings, update the server source to use a parameter. Explanation, a parameter is the only part of a query that can be updated or changed in the Power BI service, by accessing the dataset settings. Updating the server source to use a parameter will update all existing queries pointing to the current server to instead use a parameter with that server name. This parameter can now be changed once this dataset is published to the Power BI service. When importing data from an Excel workbook into Power BI, you receive the error message, "We couldn't find any data formatted as a table." What should you do to resolve the error? Option 1, in the Excel workbook, select the data you want to import, select the Data Validation button, and save the change. Option 2, in the Excel workbook, select the data you want to import, create a table, and save the change. Option 3, in Power BI, add a template app. Option 4, in Power BI, add an organizational app. Correct answers, in the Excel workbook, select the data you want to import, create a table, and save the change. Explanation, the error message indicates that the Excel workbook does not contain a table. To create it, in the Excel workbook, you need to select the data you want to import, press Ctrl+T or choose the table button, click OK, and save the change. Using the Data Validation button in Excel does not create a table. Organizational and template apps provide a way to implement functionality within Power BI, but, in this case, the issue is caused by an absence of a table in the Excel workbook, so installing an app would have no. From Power BI Desktop, you create a data source by importing an Excel file that contains 10,000 rows. You plan to identify data anomalies within the data source. You need to ensure that column distribution considers all rows in the Excel file. What should you do? Option 1, in the data source settings, modify the advanced settings. Option 2, in the data source settings, modify the edit permissions settings. Option 3, in the Power Query Editor window, enable the column profile view. Option 4, in the Power Query Editor window, modify the query settings. Correct answers: in the Power Query Editor window, enable the column profile view. Explanation: by default, Power BI uses the top 1000 rows for profiling. To ensure that column distribution considers all rows in the Excel file, you need to modify the Power Query Editor profiling status setting. The Power Query Editor settings, advanced settings, and permissions settings have no bearing on the profiling characteristics. You have a query that retrieves data from a table that contains more than 8,000 rows of data. In Power Query Editor, you notice that the column statistics for each column shows a count of exactly 1,000. You need to ensure that the column statistics for each column shows the statistics based on all rows that are returned by the query. What should you do? Option 1, add a table buffer applied step to the query. Option 2, change the query load type from import to direct query. Option 3, create a top and row count parameter for the query. Option 4, from the query window, select column profiling on the entire dataset. Correct answers: from the query window, select column profiling on the entire dataset. Explanation: selecting column profiling for the entire dataset will change the column profiler to analyze the entire query dataset. Adding a table buffer applied step will only cache the entire query in memory during refresh. The query load type in the model will not impact how many rows are used by the column profiler. Using a top and row count applied step or applying a parameter will not change how the column statistics feature calculates. You import an Excel file into Power BI Desktop and begin to analyze the data in Power Query Editor. You need to identify outliers in a text column within the data source. Which information should you use from Power Query Editor? Option 1, the min and max values in column profile. Option 2, the top and bottom entries in value distribution. Option 3, the value of the distinct entry in column statistics. Option 4, the value of the unique entry in column statistics. Correct answers: the top and bottom entries in value distribution. Explanation: the top and bottom entries in value distribution identify outliers, which appear, respectively, the greatest and the smallest number of times in that column. The value of the distinct entry in column statistics indicates the total count of different values. The value of the unique entry in column statistics indicates the total count of different values that appear only once. The min and max values in the column profile of a text column designate the entries which appear, respectively, first and last in alphabetical order. You use Power BI Desktop to transform a query that retrieves data from an Excel spreadsheet. You need to view and modify multiple steps in all the M code. Which interface should you use? Option 1, Advanced Editor in the Power Query Editor. Option 2, Data View. Option 3, Formula Bar in the Power Query Editor. Option 4, Model View. Correct answers: Advanced Editor in the Power Query Editor. Explanation: the Advanced Editor in the Power Query Editor provides the ability to work with all the M code used for shaping data in a query at once. Data View provides access to data within a dataset. Model View provides access to the data model of a dataset. The formula bar in the Power Query Editor provides the ability to edit only one step at a time. You have an Excel spreadsheet that contains 3 columns labeled Year, 2021, and 2012. The entries in rows for the first column consists of names of the individual months in the year, while the other 2 columns contain the sales amount for each month for the corresponding year. You import data from the Excel spreadsheet into Power BI Desktop. You need to transform the data so it will consist of 3 columns, with the first one containing month, the second containing year, and the third containing the sales amount for that month and year. Which transformation should you use first? Option 1, Pivot. Option 2, Remove columns. Option 3, Transpose table. Option 4, Unpivot. Correct answers, Unpivot. Explanation: selecting Unpivot will allow you to shape the current table into the one with the year, month, and sales amount columns, which will need to be renamed afterwards. Pivot would be applicable in the opposite scenario, in which flat data needs to be reorganized into one containing aggregate values for each unique value in each column. Transposing would switch rows and columns. Removing columns would result in a table with insufficient data to perform Unpivot. You have a query named FactSales that retrieves data from a SQL Server table. You need to update the query to prevent new columns that may be added to the table in the future from getting imported during dataset refreshes. You select the existing columns in the query. Which 2 applied steps can you use in Power Query Editor to achieve the goal? Each correct answer presents a complete solution. Option 1, choose columns. Option 2, remove columns. Option 3, remove other columns. Option 4, transpose. Correct answers: choose columns, remove other columns. Explanation: using the choose columns and remove other columns options will allow you to explicitly select the columns that you want to keep. This enforces the requirement that new columns will not be automatically added in the future. Using remove columns will delete the existing columns in the table, and new columns that get added in the future will still be imported automatically. Transpose treats rows as columns, and columns as rows. It will not limit the number of columns being imported. You have an Azure SQL database that contains 2 tables named Sales Orders and Sales Order Details. You load the Sales Orders and Sales Order Details tables into Power BI Desktop. The tables have a relationship based upon the Sales Order ID column. You need to combine the 2 tables into one table. The solution must meet the following requirements. There is a row for every Sales Order Details row in the resulting table, even if there is no corresponding Sales Orders row. For every Sales Order Details row, the row in the resulting table includes the corresponding Sales Orders row data if the Sales Order row exists. Any Sales Order row data that does not have corresponding Sales Order Details rows is not included in the resulting table. What should you do to combine the 2 tables? Option 1, append the tables. Option 2, merge the tables using the full outer join kind based on the Sales Order ID. Option 3, merge the tables using the inner join kind based on the Sales Order ID. Option 4, merge the tables using the left outer join kind based on the Sales Order ID. Correct answers: merge the tables using the left outer join kind based on the Sales Order ID. Explanation: to construct the resulting table, it is necessary to merge tables using the left outer join kind with the Sales Order Details as the first table. Appending tables in this context would not make sense, since they do not have the same columns. Merging using the inner join kind would not produce a table that includes a Sales Order Details row where there is no corresponding Sales Order row. Full outer join would produce a table that includes Sales Order row data that do not have corresponding Sales Order Details. You have created a Power BI dataset and need to create multiple reports. What is a benefit of using a Power BI dataset as a data source for multiple reports compared to each report having a separate dataset? Option 1, it increases the number of scheduled refreshes that can be configured for the Power BI dataset. Option 2, it increases the speed of the reports and visuals connected to the Power BI datasets. Option 3, it prevents sensitive data from being shared with report consumers. Option 4, it reduces the number of datasets, refreshes, and storage requirements in the Power BI service. Correct answers: it reduces the number of datasets, refreshes, and storage requirements in the Power BI service. Explanation: when multiple reports use the same Power BI dataset versus each having their own import model, you reduce the number of datasets that are needed to be published to the Power BI service. Fewer datasets mean fewer refreshes, less storage space requirements, and less overhead for admins. You are evaluating whether you need to create a dashboard in Power BI. In which scenario do you need a dashboard instead of a report in Power BI? Option 1, you need to add filters. Option 2, you need to add slicers. Option 3, you need to display visuals on multiple pages. Option 4, you need to display visuals that use different datasets. Correct answers, you need to display visuals that use different datasets. Explanation: the ability to combine data from multiple datasets is one of the features that is available in dashboards but not supported in reports. Dashboards do not include the filter, visualization, and fields panes that are available in Power BI Desktop when working with dashboards. Dashboards, unlike reports, contain only a single page. You are evaluating whether you need to create a dashboard in Power BI. In which scenario do you need a dashboard instead of a report in Power BI? Option 1, you need to add filters. Option 2, you need to add slicers. Option 3, you need to display visuals on multiple pages. Option 4, you need to display visuals that use different datasets. Correct answers, you need to display visuals that use different datasets. Explanation: the ability to combine data from multiple datasets is one of the features that is available in dashboards but not supported in reports. Dashboards do not include the filter, visualization, and fields panes that are available in Power BI Desktop when working with dashboards. Dashboards, unlike reports, contain only a single page. You need to create a dashboard from a published report in Power BI. Which option in the report should you use? Option 1, copy visual as image. Option 2, export data. Option 3, pin visual. Option 4, Spotlight. Correct answers, pin visual. Explanation: the pin visual option allows you to pin the visual to an existing dashboard or create a new one. The copy visual as image option allows you to copy a visual as an image to clipboard. The export data option allows you to export data in the XLSX or CSV formats, but not create a dashboard. The Spotlight option allows you to highlight a visual on the report page, but not create a dashboard. Your company has a SharePoint server located in a data center in Montreal. You plan to create a report in the Power BI service that will use Microsoft Excel files stored on the SharePoint server. You need to recommend a solution to ensure that the dataset for the report can automatically refresh daily. What should you include in the recommendation? Option 1, a point-to-site virtual private network, VPN. Option 2, a site-to-site virtual private network, VPN. Option 3, an on-premises data gateway. Option 4, Azure Data Box. Correct answers: an on-premises data gateway. Explanation: an on-premises SharePoint server requires the use of a Power BI gateway since it's an on-premises data source. VPN-based solutions would provide connectivity to an Azure virtual network, but not Power BI service. Azure Data Box is a solution for migrating data to Azure, which is not applicable in this scenario. You manage a Power BI workspace in shared capacity. The workspace contains a report that uses a dataset named DS1. You need to implement an incremental refresh of DS1. What should you do first? Option 1, in Power BI Desktop, define filter parameters. Option 2, in Power BI Desktop, define the incremental refresh policy. Option 3, publish the dataset to the Power BI service. Option 4, upgrade the Power BI workspace to the premium SKU. Correct answers: in Power BI Desktop, define filter parameters. Explanation: to implement an incremental refresh of the dataset, you first need to define filter parameters. Next you would define the incremental refresh policy. An incremental refresh policy does not require upgrading to a premium SKU. Publishing the dataset to the Power BI service is required for the incremental refresh policy to take effect, so it's the last step of setting up an incremental refresh. You have a row-level security role, RLS, in a dataset called User Security Group. This role needs to filter a RLS table that contains a column with the emails of users in the following format. name@company.com. Which function should be used in the code for the RLS role to match the user's Microsoft Entra ID login credentials with the emails contained in the RLS table column? Option 1, nameoff. Option 2, triadas. Option 3, user objected. Option 4, user principal name. Correct answers: user principal name. Explanation: USRPRINCIPLNAME would return the Microsoft Entra ID login in the format of name@company.com. User objected would not return the Microsoft Entra ID login in the same format. Nameoff is a function that is used for field parameters. Triadas is a function related to column filtering. You manage a Power BI workspace in a shared capacity. The workspace contains a dataset named DS1. You plan to schedule a refresh of DS1. What is the number of consecutive refresh failures of DS1 that will automatically disable the refresh schedule? Option 1, 2. Option 2, 4. Option 3, 16. Option 4, 64. Correct answers: 4. Explanation: if there are 4 consecutive dataset refresh failures, the refresh schedule will be automatically disabled. You manage a Power BI workspace. You need to delegate the task to update workspace metadata. The solution must use the principle of least privilege. Which role should you use? Option 1, admin. Option 2, contributor. Option 3, member. Option 4, viewer. Correct answers: admin. Explanation: the admin role is the only one that has the permission to update workspace metadata. You have a Power BI dataset. You need to set the dataset as discoverable. Which 2 configurations will allow the dataset to be marked as discoverable? Each correct answer presents a complete solution. Option 1, certify the dataset. Option 2, enable RLS on the dataset. Option 3, promote the dataset. Option 4, publish dataset to a premium workspace. Correct answers: certify the dataset. Promote the dataset. Explanation: a certified dataset can be configured to be discoverable for users without access to request permissions to access. A promoted dataset can be configured to be discoverable for users without access to request permissions to access. RLS is not required on a dataset to become discoverable. Premium, capacity or shared, is not required to make a dataset discoverable. You plan to create a report in Power BI Desktop. You need to create a visualization that displays data in 2 or more dimensions and cross-highlights with other visuals on the same report page. Which type of visualization should you use? Option 1, card. Option 2, matrix. Option 3, scatter. Option 4, table. Correct answers: matrix. Explanation: a matrix visualization displays data in 2 or more dimensions and cross-highlights with other visuals on the same report page. A card visualization displays a single data point. A scatter visualization is a chart, not a grid. It has 2 value axes, with one set of numerical data along a horizontal axis and another set of numerical values along a vertical axis. A table visualization is a grid that contains related data in a grid format, with support for 2 dimensions only. You plan to create a report in Power BI Desktop that will display sales opportunities by 5 sales stages, including lead, prospect, qualified, committed, and transacted. You need to identify the type of visualization that will display a linear process with sequentially connected stages, with one stage transitioning to the next. Which visualization should you use? Option 1, funnel. Option 2, slicer. Option 3, tree map. Option 4, waterfall. Correct answers: funnel. Explanation: a funnel visualization displays a linear process with sequentially connected stages, with one stage transitioning to the next. A slicer visualization is available in different formats, including list, drop-down, and buttons, but not sequentially connected stages, with one stage transitioning to the next. A tree map visualization displays data as a set of nested rectangles. A waterfall visualization displays a running total as values are added or subtracted. You need to create a custom Python visual by using Power BI Desktop. What do you need to do first? Option 1, configure global Python scripting options in Power BI Desktop. Option 2, enable preview features in Power BI Desktop. Option 3, enable the script visuals option in the visualization pane of Power BI Desktop. Option 4, install Python on your computer. Correct answers, install Python on your computer. Explanation: to create a Python visual by using Power BI Desktop, you first need to install Python on your computer. Once Python is installed, you may need to configure the global Python scripting options in Power BI Desktop. Enabling the Script Visuals option in the visualization pane of Power BI Desktop is done once Python is installed. Creating a custom Python visual by using Power BI Desktop has no dependency on enabling preview features. You are editing a report in Power BI Desktop. You need to adjust the behavior of the report by editing interactions. Which two types of interaction behavior can you change between visuals? Each correct answer presents a complete solution. Option 1, drill through. Option 2, expand. Option 3, filter. Option 4, highlight. Correct answers: filter, highlight. Explanation: a filter will show you the filtered data in this visual. Highlight is the default interaction between visuals. It shows you both the unfiltered and filtered values in the visual. For comparison, create a bookmark that toggles the visibility of a visual. This bookmark must only toggle the visibility state and perform no other action. Which three configurations should you make? Each correct answer presents part of the solution. Option 1, disable the data option. Option 2, disable the current page option. Option 3, disable the display option. Option 4, enable the current page option. Option 5, enable the data option. Correct answers: disable the data option. Disable the current page option. Enable the display option. Explanation: the current page capture allows the bookmark to navigate back to the page of capture. The data capture updates filters and drill through, which should not occur for this bookmark. The display capture updates visual visibility on the report page. You have a bar chart and column chart visual on a report page. Selecting any column from the bar chart visual filters the column chart data to less than 1% of its unfiltered value. Which type of visual interaction should be used when the bar chart is filtering the column chart to ensure that you can easily see the data? Option 1, expand. Option 2, drill through. Option 3, filter. Option 4, highlight. Correct answers: filter. Explanation: filter will show you the filtered data in this visual. So even when showing filtered data that is less than 1% of the unfiltered value, it will still display well in the column visual. Highlight shows you both the unfiltered and filtered values in the visual, for comparison purposes. Drill through is a page navigation experience that takes you from one page to another plus applies a set of filters to page navigated to. Expand is a way to navigate down a level using the hierarchy controls. You have a visual that is being cross-highlighted. By default, what data will be displayed in a report tooltip? Option 1, a report page tooltip with cross-highlighted data. Option 2, both the unfiltered and filtered, cross-highlighted, data. Option 3, the filtered, cross-highlighted, data. Option 4, the unfiltered, non-cross-highlighted, total data. Correct answers: the filtered, cross-highlighted, data. Explanation: by default, report tooltips will apply the filter from the cross-highlighted data into the tooltip. Report page tooltips need to be manually created and are not assigned to a visual by default. You need to create a visual that will display information on a continuous axis. Which two data types can be used to display a continuous axis on a visual? Each correct answer presents a complete solution. Option 1, binary. Option 2, date. Option 3, decimal number. Option 4, text. Correct answers: date, decimal number. Explanation: date data types display well on a continuous, range, axis where report users understand chronological order. Number data types display well on a continuous, range, axis where report users understand the order between min and max values. Binary data and text, categorical, data cannot be displayed on a continuous, range, axis. Date, time, or number are the only data types comparable with a continuous axis. You need to add an analytics line to a visual. The value for the line must equal the result of a DAX measure that always returns a consistent single value. The DAX measure must only be used to populate the analytics line. Which type of analytics line should you use? Option 1, average line. Option 2, constant line. Option 3, max line. Option 4, min line. Correct answers, constant line. Explanation: either the X or Y-axis constant line allows a DAX measure to be used to provide this value for the visual. The min line populates the minimum value for a series already present in the visual. The max line populates the maximum value for a series already present in the visual. The average line populates the average value for a series already present in the visual. You plan to use Power BI Desktop to analyze sales data for products sold by your company. You need to create a DAX formula that will list 10 best-selling products sorted by their total sales. Which DAX function should you use? Option 1, Maxa. Option 2, Max. Option 3, Ranks. Option 4, Topn. Correct answers, Topn. Explanation: the TOPN function returns top n rows of the specified table, such as, for example, top 10 best-selling products sorted by their total sales. The Maxa function returns the largest value in a column. The Max function evaluates an expression for each row and returns the largest value. The RANKX function returns ranking of a number in a list of numbers for each row of a target table. You need to add a new visual to a Power BI dashboard. This visual does not exist on a report in the workspace. What should you do first? Option 1, open See Related Content. Option 2, open the File menu. Option 3, select Add a Tile. Option 4, select Ask a Question about your data. Correct answers: select Ask a Question about your data. Explanation: the Q&A feature lets you create a visual by typing in a question about your data. This new visual can then be pinned to the dashboard, without adding it to a report. Inside the File menu and the Tiles menu there are no visual options. See Related Content displays related content like reports, datasets, etc. You can't create a new visual from here. In Power BI Desktop, you need to create a role. Which two interfaces can you use? Each correct answer presents a complete solution. Option 1, Data View. Option 2, Model View. Option 3, Page View. Option 4, Power Query Editor. Option 5, Report View. Correct answers: Model View, Report View. Explanation: the Model View provides the ability to design and implement structure of a dataset and include the option to create a role. The Report View provides the ability to manage roles, including their creation. The Data View provides access to data within a dataset. Power Query Editor provides the ability to transform and analyze data. The Page View is an option available from within the Report View and is intended to simplify designing and building reports. You have implemented role-based security that restricts access to a Power BI desktop dataset for users who are assigned the role named Salespeople. You need to validate that the implementation works. What should you do? Option 1, in Power Query Editor, add a conditional column to the Salesperson table. Option 2, in the Report View, activate the View as feature. Option 3, in the Report View, add a DAX expression filter to the Salesperson table. Option 4, in the Report View, create a what-if parameter. Correct answers: in the Report View, activate the View as feature. Explanation: activating the View as feature will allow you to test the role-level security as someone with the Salesperson role. A what-if parameter is intended for visualization and analytics of results of changing a value of a variable, not validating role-level security. Adding a DAX expression filter to the Salesperson table is part of implementing role-level security, which is already completed. A conditional column is computed from other columns or values. You need to create a row-level security, RLS, role for a dataset. What should you do first? Option 1, assign workspace members to the security group in the Power BI service. Option 2, in Power BI Desktop, open Manage Roles. Option 3, in Power BI Desktop, open the Advanced Editor in the Power Query Editor. Option 4, in the Power BI service, Open the security settings for the dataset. Correct answers. In Power BI Desktop, open Manage Roles. Explanation: RLS roles are created or modified from the Manage Roles space. You can assign AD users/groups to an existing role in the security settings, but new RLS roles must be created in Power BI Desktop or other model authoring external tool.